everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 29 of Monster. And oh my god! Last episode, things were all starting to come together. Richard is piecing together that there are all these connections with the various crimes, with Johan, with the current case that involves Lottie and involves Carl and involves Mr. Schuvald. All of that, it's all coming together. And I'm like, and it seems like Johan or some force is trying to stop Richard or kill him or something, and Tinma's not there yet. It's all madness, right? Right? It's just all madness. So I don't know. I don't watch the previews at the end of the episodes. I decided not to do that because I wanted to go into each episode surprised. And now that Richard knows what Johan looks like and is making the connection, we know that Johan doesn't want people to know about him. And he's been trying to erase evidence of his existence as he goes. So what are we going to do with that? So there is lots of stuff going on and I am so excited to see what's going to happen. But oh my gosh, y'all. Oh, so I do have a few comments before we start. Santiago pointed out something that I completely forgot about in the course of, I was told that when a lot of people were debating whether I should watch more than one episode at once, which I'm glad I didn't because I don't think my brain could handle more than one episode at once, especially with the discussions that we do. But they were saying that little details will start to come back and add up on the way. And I feel like I'm somewhat seasoned with this type of narrative because I'm reading Heaven Official's Blessing now at the same time. And that is a story where details from volume 1 will show up in volume 4. And you're just like, whoa, this was 800 pages ago. Let me go back and find this. So it's one of those narratives that I enjoy a lot because it's rewarding. You go back and tie things back together. But I do understand if a few things slip through the cracks and I do forget about them. And Santiago pointed out something that was really cool that I completely forgot. And that was, Johan's a law major. So was Nina. So was Nina. Before her parents died and she went on this mission to track down Johan, Nina was a law major as well. Funny that. So just the coincidences, parallels, what have you. That is so fascinating to me. I did not realize that and forgot about it. So thank you, Santiago, for pointing that out. And then the other thing, the other kind of connection that's been made with what we've seen so far is from HBanana7, who said that when you see Johan surrounded by all the children a few episodes back, it kind of is reminiscent of at the ED where the man who has the monster inside of them is being cheered on by all the children after he moves the log, right? After he moves this obstruction to their well-being, all the children cheer, but the monster pops out and scares them away. So it's one of those things where, just waiting, it's just like a bomb. It's like, the little crank Jack in the Box. It's like, dee, 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 dee. You're just waiting for the monster to pop out. That's where we are with Johan. And we've seen Johan seemingly be very, very congenial and wonderful to get along with and just has the silver tongue. But the question is, when does the Jack in the Box pop out? Is Johan self-aware of that? Is he using that as an excuse? What do we do with that? So I'm just so floored. So thank you, HBanana, for pointing that out as well, because it is just like the ED. Will we see Johan pop out? What will that be like? So will we see the monster pop out? What is that like? I don't know, but I'm worried for Carl still. Even though Carl and Schuvald seem to be doing fine, I'm still worried for them. I'm very worried for Richard because Richard, there's no reason for Richard to be kept alive. Carl has an excuse to be kept alive by Johan because he's tied to Schuvald and it'll be too suspicious if Carl dies, especially, under the circumstances of, it'll be like, wow, you mean the accountant did it that had control of all the money? Who would have suspected, right? But in Richard's case, Richard almost has to go for Johan because he's someone that could crack the code and give that information to someone that can make use of it. So Richard is very much a liability to Johan. He needs to get rid of him. And it seems like he's actively trying to, but I don't know, y'all. I'm really, last episode was just like a cavalcade of things coming together. And I was like, oh my God. And so now we're here in episode 29. So before we start real quick, I want to give a quick shout out over to our philanthropy tier over to Patreon. I have 3 tiers on Patreon that are $1, $5, and $10. They give you access to the Discord, access to the polls to vote for shows that I'm going to watch, access to everything a week early than it will premiere on YouTube, and, you know, other perks such as the philanthropy tier where you get a shout out in these videos, and if there is a tie, you all get to be the tiebreakers. So also, if we do live streams, then any Q&As that I answer will definitely all come from Patreon. And then if I have extra time, I'll go to YouTube. But the patrons will definitely get questions answered in the Q&As for live streams based on what's to come. So with that being said, I want to give a shout out over to Edgar, to Dana, to Nameless Monster, to Tyrone, to Anime Annie, to Arjo, to Kenny, to Shimoyama, to Be Happy, to Translucent Men, Eric, Sunspots, and Alex Cornejo. Thank you all so much for supporting me and being so kind and generous. I really greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So, you know what, guys? I don't know what to expect. I don't know. I at this point, when we ended off the episode, Richard had figured out that everything was connected, but what do we do with that? So where do we go to from here? So I guess we'll find out, won't we? So we're going to start Monster episode 29 and just see what we get, y'all. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. I'm going to try not to choke on my Werthers. No! Richard, no! Damn it! He was so close! If he's dead, right? Damn it, no! As soon as he started figuring out everything, I was like, Johan's got to kill him. Because he's figuring he's getting too close to the truth, right? Of just that Johan's manipulating everything, right? And I thought, but maybe, and he was gonna meet his daughter. No! The monster popped out. Yeah. But it's so stupid because the monster's always been there. The monster is there. The monster is there. It's just, when does it decide to strike in public? That is the thing, right? That is the thing. Is that there at this point, there are not 2 Johans. No. There is one. He has a monster in him, as does everyone. And although Jurgens would argue that he is literally a monster, he doesn't just have one in him, it's not cliche, but he chooses when to let it out. Yeah, and that's the thing. It is a choice. There's a lot of things Johan says in this episode that I'm like, but that's a choice. And I'm just like, dude, you are trying, and I'm not going to excuse, this gets really complicated really quick. And so I want to try to tread somewhat delicately, because there is something to it, right? There is something to it. And this gets really complicated very quickly, but he chooses when he lets the monster out, but it's there all the time. It's always there. And this episode kind of, I think, to me, proves that it's always there. There's not 2 Johans. There is one Johan. He chooses when to let the monster out. It's a choice. And we'll talk about that, because this episode is so crazy. Jurgens is dead. That witness is dead. Although Gillen has seen him kill. Gillen is a witness to why he killed himself, because of Johan's picture. The doctor who knows. Here's my thing. I feel like over here, obviously Tenma knows that Johann is a killer. Tenma obviously knows this. Dr. Gillen, aka Rudy, has suspect that he could be a killer too, based on Jurgen's reaction. And then we have the counselor friend. The counselor friend of Richard. And then obviously we had Richard, but Richard is dead. My only thing was, is Richard not dead? And those police guys working for Johann, trying to lure out the counselor so they can kill him and then kill Richard too, and kill two birds with one stone, and then go after Gillen. Because Johann seems bound and determined to erase his footsteps. He does not want to be tracked. And he doesn't want anything leading back to him or his past or anything that has to do with him. So what do we do with that? But, oh my God. I was rooting for Richard. I love that character. I was rooting for him. I was rooting for you. I feel like Tyra. I was rooting for you. And then Johann just, my question is, I'm assuming next episode we're going to find out how he dies. Like, did he drink from the bottle and commit suicide? Did Johann, like, kill him after giving him the bottle? What did he do? My theory was that he got drunk. My theory was that he got drunk, is that he's going to give him... My theory is that Johann's going to give him the bottle, he's going to drink from it and die. And they're going to frame it as, oh, well, Richard committed suicide after drinking. But the counselor's going to be like, but there's some holes with that. Because the counselor was going to be like, no, he just said he was getting hold of his daughter. Why would he drink? There's no reason for that. And then his daughter just talked to him on the phone to meet up with him. Why, after talking on the phone with his daughter to meet up with her when he was so happy, would he go to drinking, which is the very opposite of what he wanted to do? So I feel like if they try to frame it on him drinking and committing suicide, if they try to do that, then if that's the case, then I feel like there's enough evidence there to kind of doubt that and to kind of suspect that there may be something else going on and not that it just was a suicide, right? Because if the daughter had rejected him, if he talked to the daughter on the phone and she had rejected him and said, I don't want to see you, then I could totally see how Johann could frame it as, oh, well, his daughter rejected him on the phone, he got drunk and he jumped off the building and committed suicide. I could see how they could make that work. And then whenever the counselor would try to go back and talk to the doctor or the police or anybody else and say, no, his daughter, they could be like, well, the daughter rejected him and that's why he committed suicide. That's suspect. That's reason enough. 1 + 1 = 2. That's reason enough for them to believe that it really was a suicide. But that's not what happens. The daughter's like, yeah, I want to meet with you. So why would he go drink? And if they try to sell it as, oh, he was celebrating, that doesn't make any sense because the whole point of him not drinking was to get to see her again. So I feel like there's some doubt there, and there's something that doesn't quite add up that I think the counselor can go off of. But I'm like, damn it, no. What do we do? What I thought was going to happen was, I was afraid Johann was going to kill him at the top of that building. What I thought was going to happen is that Johann was going to take the drink from the bottle, and then shoot Richard and be like, oh, I got drunk and shot you. I didn't have any proof of what you were doing and looking at information into my whole background, but seems suspect to me. That's what I thought he was going to do, is like play on the fact of him being drunk when he shot the boy. Joss. But yeah, no, that we don't know how that ends up happening. We don't even know if he's truly dead, if it's a trick by Johann. It seems like it's true, but no body, no death. So until we see what happened to Richard. But I was just like, why are you following him to the top of the tower? Horror movie 101. You don't follow the suspect killer to the top of a location. You stay on ground level, bitch. You don't go upstairs. You can't run from upstairs. I'm so mad that he's dead. I really liked Richard's character a lot. And he's dead, and we got to know him over these last couple episodes, and I was rooting for him. I wanted to see Rosemary again, damn it. We can't have nice things in Monster. But we need to talk about this episode. When you talk about this episode, we need to talk about what's going on, but damn it. That's just so frustrating. So yeah, so we go to the children playing that are playing like in the tree, and there's a kid there that's playing the bad guy. So they're playing like, it feels like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or like some kind of like, you know, mecha anime where there's the bad guy. And he's like, that's not fair. You should fall down if you get kicked. He says the evil emperor who plots world conquest cannot be defeated that easily. And they're like, don't you know at the end of those TV shows, the bad guy always loses. And then Johan's like, oh, is there a philosophical debate going on? Like, as he just shows up. Like, oh, is there something philosophical going on? What is this? Is your world conquest coming along smoothly? And they're like, Johan, like, he won't go down no matter what. And he says, you know, the hard part comes after you conquer the world. Oh my God, what the fudge, Johan? You and Aaron gonna meet up for lunchies? Like, just, So, Johan, here's the thing. Johan to the child, he does not dissuade the notion of world conquest. That's red flag number one. If a kid's like, I'm going to destroy the world. And he's like, well, you know, the hard part is after you destroy the world. You know, that's when the hard decisions start to be made. I'm like, red flag. Get this man away from the children. Yeah. And then he goes, what kind of world do you plan to build? And he says, I don't know anything about that. I guess I'll just leave it messed up. Because Johan's like, well, how will you rebuild it once you've done that? And the child says that he'll just leave the world messed up and in chaos. He doesn't have a plan for how to rebuild it. He's like, I'm just going to leave it messed up, and that's all I know what to do. And Johan's like, it sounds more fun if you're just going to mess it all up. And he's like, I'm quitting the Rainbow Rangers and joining the evil organization. He's brainwashing all these children, right? He's brainwashing these kids. Because then the other kids are like, oh, you mean we can just mess up stuff and we don't have to have any, like, plans? So the other kids say that they're going to join the evil organization. Johan's against the Rainbow Rangers. We got a problem, y'all. I don't know why, but it just felt like that little kid that was playing the evil emperor. If you've ever watched the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies from like the one from like 1990, the Foot Clan, where Shredder is like the leader of the Foot Clan, the underground kids that are like in the warehouse, they don't have any plan. They don't have anything they're really working for. There's like different levels in the Foot in that movie. But a lot of the kids are just like, we just want to wreck shit and cause chaos and smoke and do whatever we want. And we don't want to be told what to do. And who cares what we're working for? We're just going to mindlessly do whatever we want and cause chaos and destruction and, you know, go against the system. And then from there, there's like different levels where you kind of, it becomes a system from there. But that kind of seems a little bit like what this is that Johan is the Shredder, only he's like hot Bishonen Shredder with like this angelic voice. And he's just like, yeah, sure, go crazy. Go do evil. Like, go against the system. Whatever. No one's going to be able to stop you. And the thing about it is that it's creating this environment. Like, Johan doesn't correct the kid. Johan doesn't be like, well, you know, you shouldn't do things that are evil or chaotic. You should, you know, try to help benefit the world. Doesn't say anything about that at all. Mr. U in children's rights doesn't say a single thing about that. But instead, he's kind of like, he's fostering this group of kids who want to quote unquote be evil, and then at the same time is proposing a bill and legislation that would prevent punishment for crimes they may commit. That seems like a problem. And we'll talk about it because it's rather complicated and it's rather sinister how he's wording everything, and the type of rhetoric he's using is sinister. But just at this point, he's just sitting there looking at the kids being like, yes, little children, start this evil organization. Go against the rainbows and into the darkness. Go right into it. And like all the kids are just hanging out with Johann. Perfectly fine. We're going to head back. And they're like, okay. And it's so subtle, right? It's just this subtle brainwashing that he's doing with these kids that is so just, he's not correcting. He's just influencing it very subtly. And just to the point where it's almost undetectable, right? It's almost subliminal. And poor Richard just being like, what the fudge? And yeah, those kids all just grabbing a hold of his hand. Oh my God. And he's just like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And, you know, Johann's just so happy. What the fudge, y'all? What the actual fudge? So let's go back to the meeting with the wife and Richard. And they talk about the daughter and how she gets colds easily. So I'm going to put Richard up here. And Richard and his whole goal to see Rosemary. And he talks about how like she gets colds easily and how he's worried about her. And he keeps the photo. He's like, and he remembers things that they did with her when she was little. And the wife is seemingly impressed by it, being like, oh, you keep a photo album of her. And he's like, yeah. And we never find out how old she is or how long it's been, right? We never find that out, which I'm wondering if we'll see her next episode, if she shows up, like if he's died or something. But we never know. But he's like, no matter how old she gets, I'll be able to recognize her instantly. And so then he gives the wife the things to pass on. Now, this could be seen as a flag of him about to commit suicide, you could say, because he gives her all the news clippings and says, hey, I want her to know the truth. You know, if something happens to me, I want her to know the truth of that I shot the boy and that I'm, you know, being tried possibly for murder. Here's the thing. And that, you know, I want to see her before, you know, something might happen. So he gives the daughter the account of his crimes against the boy. We'll talk about that later because Johann seems to think Johann is like Michael Jordan in that moment, being like, and I took that personally. Like Johann has a thing, right? But I could see how this could be spun to where they would say, oh, well, Richard was going to commit suicide because, you know, a tendency is you start giving things away or start like trying to make amends before you go. And him giving the newspaper clippings to the wife was a sign of him trying to like part ways with this information before he exits this earth. But again, he seemed happy on the phone. So you would think the daughter would be like all about it. He's like, I want her to know the truth. And I wonder if I can see her again. And then she says, you return to how you used to be, the youthful eyes you had when you were a rookie detective. And I felt so bad for him because it's like in that moment, his wife is reconnecting with him and he like kind of gets that glimmer in his eye like, oh, hey, maybe you and I can reconnect. You know, if I've, you know, shed off, you know, the drinking and all of that, maybe you and I can do something again. Maybe it'll be all right. Maybe we can build up this relationship back to what it once was. The one thing that is a bit unclear at this point is as far as his drinking, did it start before he shot the boy or truly afterwards? That was the one thing about Johann's claim against him when he was like, oh, well, you weren't drinking when you shot the boy. And he may not have been, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But the way that the other detective and the way that the wife and the way that everyone else acts around him is that it seems like he had been drinking for a while, had slowly like become an alcoholic, and then the straw that broke the back was the moment that he shot the boy, seemingly drunk. And that's when it was like, okay, you've reached a point where you have to stop because you've killed someone because of the state that you're in. That's what I thought was the case, that Richard had been an alcoholic and that the tipping point was him shooting a kid on accident rather than taking him in. and messing up the case. Because otherwise, you know, it's not like he spiraled afterwards. It seemed like he had been spiraling, and shooting the boy was like the last straw. And they were like, no, we need to do an intervention now. So what Johan says is interesting. And we'll touch back on it when we're on the rooftop. But I felt so bad for him here because, like, you could just see that glimmer of like, oh, maybe he'll reconnect with his wife. Maybe he will see his daughter. Maybe Richard's turning things around and he's been on the right path this whole time. He was doing so good. And it's just like Johan completely destroyed him in 5 minutes. It's just, And this episode being called Just One Case. So Richard tries to sneak into the Liebert's house using the claim that he's an insurance salesman. He tries to sneak in with that claim to find out about Johan's parents, supposedly. And so he's been staying with this family in Munich, right? So he is basically brainwashed. He's brainwashed this family to let him stay in Munich the last 4 years, while he's setting up whatever he is with Schubert or Schuvald, however you want to say it. So this has been a long game. But the really weird thing is that Johan has this really creepy ability to manipulate and easily brainwash weak-minded or vulnerable individuals, right? Because he brainwashes Jürgen, as we'll see in this episode, and as we've seen in the past. He brainwashes Jürgen to the point where Jürgen was questioning whether the woman in the basement was really his mother or not. Whether it was his real mother. Like, he was questioning whether this strange woman was his actual biological mom because of what Johan had told him. And then these people who lost their actual son, Johan, at age 2, Johan comes into their life and gives them exactly what they wanted. They wanted their son back. And Johan gives them that. So he easily manipulates them. And then with Schuvald wants this calming voice that reassures him in his aspirations and dreams and reunites him with his biological son. Johan does that for him. So it seems like these individuals that need something in their life, Johan fills in that gap, but along the way he manipulates them so easily. And I don't know if it's just that they're weak-minded individuals or what the case is. I'm sure we'll find out by the end of the series, but it's becoming so apparent how easily he can manipulate people. And I'm sure he manipulated the boy that Richard shot because he's from Kinderheim. So So yeah, we'll talk about all that. But he ends up going in. Yeah, and the moment that Richard looks over at the photo and sees that little baby kid looks nothing like Johan. And he's like, any parent would know their kid the moment that they looked at them. Like, you would not confuse it with, especially that ugly baby. That baby looks more like Edmund, you know, that died a few episodes ago than anything else. And he's like, I love the line of Richard, though. I love when he says, everything looked perfectly ordinary. And I love Richard's line where he's like, the more ordinary it seems, the less ordinary it actually is. And I was like, please don't die. And then supposedly he has died. I'm like, why? So, and I'm worried about Gillen. I'm worried about Rudy. I'm worried about the counselor. Johan's going to try to like cut all ties and kill off any evidence. I'm like, I'm terrified for them. I'm like, what do we do? But yeah, he's like, he's going to keep looking up something. He's like, he had this good reputation. He's like, I'm missing something. And that's when he sees the photo of him holding Rosemary and made the comment to his wife about how he would know her even if she kept growing up. So he's like, why do these people not recognize this baby that looks nothing like Johan? And the whole time, this whole episode, I kept thinking somebody was going to kill him. I kept thinking like the guy on the bench with the cigarettes in the place where he got the birth certificate was going to kill him. I kept thinking all these bad things were going to happen, and then it's Johan. I would not have opened up that damn door. If you suspect Johan of being a possible serial killer, why would you open up that door? Hell no, I would not open up that door. No, sir. And he says, Johann Liebert. Well, here's the problem. It said that Johann Liebert was born February 9th of 1976. that is assuming that he is an Aquarius, and Johann does not seem like an Aquarius. No. I don't know what sign Johann seems like. It's just an astrological joke. But so everything, like all the things tying out to the records burning in a fire, all of the Schubert ties being severed. Like, Johann has planned this out for years of how to get to Schubert, to get to his money and his influence, but to what purpose? And why go to all this trouble? Like, it's like burning down City Hall records, like plotting out this intricate string of deaths and random happenstances. Like what is the point of this long con? And how does Tenma factor into it? Because Tenma and Nina supposedly factor into it. How does that work? There's just so many questions. There's so many questions. I'm like, what? I don't know. And that's when Richard's like, oh my God, since it's a small city, most of the paperwork was restored upon request. And he's like, well, shit. So then they take, and I love that he's just looking around trying to find like some trace of Johann in the cemetery, being like, okay, did he actually die? Like, that was his hunch. And then he did. And it's like, oh my God. And so the picture of Johann that Gillen has, I'm like, I'm going to keep that picture of Johann safe, y'all, because Johann's trying to find all evidence and destroy it. And so that's the trick. The photo, Jurgens, who is tied, was a witness. And Rudy is on a quest to prove Tenma's innocence. I'm like, hell no. Oh God. You know what just hit me too? Whenever Nina saw Johann in the hospital and Johann was reaching for her and crying, and it parallels whenever Carl turned around and Johann was reaching for him and crying, it's the same thing. So I just, and a part of me is like, it's so deceptive, because a part of you is like, is that Johann crying out for help? But then I'm like, you manipulated these people to kill them. So no, it's like, we cannot help you. What? No, like, you're a grown ass man. Well, I mean, he's like, what, 19 or 20? But then he finds a tombstone with Johann Liebert. And so, okay, so the counselor knows everything, which is very worrisome for the counselor knowing everything. Because him and I don't know how much Dr. Gillen knows at this point, but the counselor knowing everything, he is going to be the next that Johann's going to try to kill off if he suspects that he knows things. So, like, how's all this information getting to Tenma? How's Tenma getting all this information? Tenma's going to show up and, like, there's going to be a massacre that's happened. Tenma's going to be like, what the fudge? Like, how is he getting all this info? I have so many questions. And they're like, who the hell is Johann? Yes. So he's like, I've got to go back. I may get to see my daughter. I'll be fine. The important thing is to move forward. So see, this was the part that was like so frustrating, is it should have been a red flag the moment the counselor's like, oh, it seems like you've made a full recovery. You don't say that in shows like these. That is like a death flag, counselor. You should know better. But this is another thing. Like, the last conversation that Richard had with the counselor was that everything was fine. He was moving forward. He was going to see his daughter. He was waiting for a phone call. All the counselor has to do to confirm his suspicions is contact the ex-wife and the daughter and say, hey, did you talk to him? And when the daughter says, yeah, he seemed like he was in good spirits, that should be the tip-off that why would this man die or kill himself if that's what ends up happening in episode 30? I don't know at this point. But I'd be like, well, why then would he hurt himself if he was just starting to bounce back and have this great recovery? That doesn't make sense. So I don't know if the counselor is going to be able to connect those dots together, or if he's going to be alive long enough to do it. I don't know, but that doesn't seem to make sense, right? I hate that Richard's dead. I'm so mad. Y'all, I can't express how upset I am. But yeah, him going back to the house. And he gets there right in time to see the girl. And he says, Rosemary. He says, yes, I'm fine. And he asks, and he says, yes, I'd love to meet. We can meet anytime you want. And like, he has this moment where he's just, where he's just tearing up, being like, getting to see his daughter again. Like, it's this beautiful moment. And I'm like, things are looking up for Richard. And I wanted him to go see his daughter. Like, I wanted him to meet. I wanted him to see her. And then out of nowhere, Johan shows up. And just like the quick rapping. Like, there was so much this episode. The tension, the animation, the quick movements, the quick zooms, the fluidity of the animation. What the hell? It was insanity. But that's just, it's Johan. I'm like, no! That is the creepiest thing. Just the shadow and that hand. Being like, Mr. Richard, it's Johan. And so then the whole thing with Jurgens. Oh my God. Saying you knew Johan pretty well. Okay, Gillen. Rudy. My father has worked at a juvenile detention center. They don't allow them to have pens or anything that could be used as a weapon. And I'm like, okay. This is not a juvenile detention center. This is a full-blown, adult standing next to you. If he asks for a pen, don't give him the pen. Why would you do that? Like, just, Gillen, you fucked up. Like, just, that part. Oh my God. The scene with Jurgens. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not allowed to hand you. He says, a pen, please. And he gives him the pen. And so what does he do? He cuts out his hair. He like scribbles out his hair. He doesn't scribble out the face of Johan, which is interesting. He scribbles out the angelic hair, right? Like suggesting that that's not the true Johan, that there's more to him that meets the eye. So they talk about Johan saying the park. Like he met him at a park, right? Maybe where kids were. He says the park. At the park. The day after I killed somebody. He said, let's stop this. Let's stop right here. I thought that as I went to the park. So he's like, I went to the park and I said, let's stop here. He had a lot of children with him. So Jurgens saw Johan at the park with the kids. And he's like scribbled out the blonde hair on his head. Which is kind of crazy because him scribbling out the blonde hair on his head almost makes it look like, is he trying to make him look like Tenma? That's so weird, like with the black hair instead. And Gillen, you done goofed, you didn't have the recorder going, really? He said, wait a minute, I forgot to start the tape. Can you start from the beginning again? He said, you should come too. He said, you should come too. And that old fisheye, I wonder if Bungo Stray Dogs, who is notorious for having that fish eye stare, I wonder if Bungo Stray Dogs like got that from Monster. And that's where they got it from. And they're like, nope, we're going to do this at every crazy character moment. And I'm like, nope, makes sense. You should come too. You should come too. And then, yeah, you should come too. Oh my God. So the phrase, you should come to. Because he told himself, let's stop here. I don't know. Again, is there some kind of psychic connection with Johan and these people? I don't know. That was kind of hinted way, way back at the beginning, and I was hoping it wasn't a spoiler, but it might be. I don't know. I don't want to know. Please don't tell me. Don't confirm or deconfirm. We'll find out. But like hearing a voice in your head saying you should come too, that sounds like a Pied Piper, right? Sounds like a Pied Piper. That's so, oh my God. And then that's when he stabs himself in the freaking face. in the side of the head, like stabs himself in the brain. What the fudge? That is absolutely horrifying. Even when you know it's coming, horrifying. Just, nope. And then that's it. And it just dies. And Gillen's like, what the fudge? And so, again, Richard, why did you open the door and let Johann in? You don't let the monster in. No! And so he says, what is it? And that's when he says, we met at Mr. Schubert's, right? And there's the whole fisheye thing, like, I'm Johann. I'm like, get out. I called you many times, but you never picked up. That's why I came to see you. I'd be like, oh, hey, I'll talk to you later. It's late at night. Bye. And like, shut the door. Don't let him in. Call the police. Nope. But he not only does that, he goes to drink with him. And I'm like, dude, Richard. Like, why? And that's when Gillen calls. I do love the animation of the counselor, like, running through his house, like trying to steady himself. That's a really good choice for animation. I actually really like that. But yeah, no, Jurgens has died in the hospital. I gave him a pin. It was a suicide, no doubt, a reaction to Johann's photo. I'll contact Richard. And then Richard doesn't answer the phone. He doesn't answer. They left the damn house and went to the bar. So yeah, he's working on this paper. I'm researching the UN Convention of 1989 on the rights of the child. So, okay. We know this is the 90s when this happened. So the UN Bill of Rights is something that Johann is researching to do possible amendments to, right? The Bill of Rights from the UN in 1989. Okay. That's currently what he's researching on. And Johann is so devious because, like, you know, the moment he asks for a drink and stuff, like, you knew he would stop drinking, so you drank in front of him on purpose, like, just to tempt him. He's like the devil tempting him, right? Just like a demon. And so Johann has this thing where he believes that Richard has executed the young boy, saying that you were drunk. You don't drink anymore because you say you were drunk when you execute that young boy. There's a little bit of some, I don't know if gaslighting is the right word. I don't want to use that phrasing, but there's a little bit of manipulation there because the suggestion is, according to Richard, he was drunk when he shot, and here's the thing. Johann says young boy. I'm going to say young man. He was 17. Like, he was 17. He was 1 year off from that whole 18 statute that he says that he tries to, like, crucify Richard with. I was like, he was, like, 9 months away from turning 18. I'm like, hold the phone. I was like, let's stop. So I'm going to say young man and underline that. He was 17. He wasn't a boy, right? And we'll talk more about this, and the reason I say that is, we'll talk about that. He says, you were when you executed the young boy. And Richard kind of gets mad. He says, am I mistaken? Johann really gets uppity in this moment. This is the most like uppity and intense and kind of controversial and confrontational that Johann has been this entire series. Like, he gets kind of mad. You can tell he's mad at Richard, right? For killing the young boy. And he says, no. Although I was drunk at the time, I did something inexcusable. And the thing about it is that Richard says what he did was wrong, right? Richard says that he was wrong to do these actions. You can't run from the past. Now, he says he was drunk when he did it, but he also says that regardless of the situation, although whatever the case may be, he's like, I did something bad. And Johann's like, well, I want to ask you about that. He said, the young boy that you killed, Stefan Joss, was 17. Okay, so we talk about Stefan Joss, who was 17. Okay. Right. Who was 17 years old. What crime did he commit? And that's when Richard's like, a young boy, a 17-year-old young boy who committed these crimes, 9 rape homicides and 2 homicides. So we finally find out what the guy did. Okay. And 2 homicides. Okay. So that is what he was suspected for. Okay. All right. That is what he's been suspected for. We'll talk about this. And he's like, and Johan's like, that's why you executed him. He's like, it wasn't an execution. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, he's so manipulative because, yeah, he is suggesting that Richard killed him because he, raped 9 people and killed them and then murdered 2 others. Like, there's 11 people dead because of him. And he's like, oh, well, that's why you chose to kill him. And he's like, and so he's like, oh, no, incidentally, under Article 40 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, he's like, let me cite this, legislation for you. A child is innocent until proven guilty, right? And he's like, yes, I do know that. I was once for the juvenile division. He's like, yes. So you under Article 37, a person under 18 cannot be executed or sentenced to life in prison for crimes they've committed. So Richard is suggesting that this was part, or Johan's suggesting is that Richard, he murdered for this reason. He's like, oh, you murdered this kid because you saw he'd done these crimes and you thought that it would be justice to kill him, to execute. He keeps using the word execute. Right? And then he brings up the Bill of Rights that says that if you're under 18, you cannot be killed or in prison for life for crimes. We'll talk about that. And says that you can't do that. Right? And Richard's kind of like, most of the convention consists of basic rights that are granted to all in this country, be it a child or an adult. Like, it should reflect. He's like, my shooting him was not an execution. It was a mistake caused by alcohol. I know I did something inexcusable. And now I'm being sanctioned by society. And Johan's like, whoa, I'm just trying to manipulate you, dude. Whoa, don't get so offended. Yeah, because he's saying Richard is blaming the alcohol, but saying he was in the wrong. But his wrongdoing, it's what is funny about Richard is he's saying that the thing that's wrong about what he did was the fact that he was drunk. So he wasn't in control. But that's also suggesting that had he been sober, would he have killed, supposedly, in Richard's perspective, if he'd been sober, would he have killed Joss, or would he have, arrested him and, taken him to jail or whatever? And Johan's trying to suggest something very, very different. He's like, I wanted to meet you for my paper. And Richard just is not having it. He's like, if I offend you, I apologize. And he's like, well, don't you want to go for a walk? The moment he took the bottle of whiskey, I was like, no, do not walk with this man. Do not drink whiskey. He's got a whiskey bottle. He's going on a walk. Get the hell out of there. No, like, all right, he says the winter nights are chilly. I was like, get the fudge out of there. What are you even doing? And he's like, I'm heading over there. Do you know Stephen Joss's record? He was young. He was in an East Berlin orphanage. And Johan's like, you needed to know more about him. So we find out about Joss that he was from Kinderheim. He was from the Kinderheim 511. So not everybody died, apparently, that went there. There were some that got out. You need to know more about him. And he's like, what? He's like, it's important if you want to know where he's coming from. The orphanage he was in was a horrible place. He was truly a nice boy. But no one knows what kind of horrible things happened to him at that orphanage or how badly his spirit was destroyed. So, yeah, so we have this idea of his spirit ruined from abuse. The horrible things that were done to him to try to make him into a soldier, right? That was the whole deal back there, right? The Convention on the Rights of Child, Article 6, the right up to life, guaranteed survival and development. So I do want to talk about this. The idea of survival and development, and the right to life. We're going to get in some tricky stuff here, right? Some tricky things. The right to preserve one's identity. And so to preserve their identity, who they are. The right to preserve who they are. And the protection from child abuse. He says those things were not provided for them in that hellish place. At Kinderheim, 511 Kinderheim. Will you be able to meet your daughter? And that's when he brings up the daughter, and Richard's like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I'd run away. Wouldn't have been there. I would have, while Johan was still walking, I would have just been like, boop, bye. Was that your daughter on the phone at your place? And it's like, yeah, how do you know? How do you know it's his daughter? Were you listening? How good of ears do you have? What is this going on? And he says, tomorrow, are you going to be able to see her? I was like, why are you following him up to the top of the tower? Nope. That is horror movie rule 101. You do not follow anybody to the top of anything. What's your purpose? To write a paper for my university. And he says, not that. Your purpose for being with Schubert. Who are you? Yeah, and we don't see Johan. It's just like waiting for the monster to burst, right? And we go to them damn water towers. You can't get near a water tower. Nope. Johan plus water towers, don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't even ask about it. Don't even go near. If you see Johan near a water tower, it's like that's the folklore. Just run away as far away as you can. Like, and the idea that he goes there to think, that Johan goes there to clear his head. That's the thing. It seems like Johan goes there to clear his mind. He said, you shot the boy because you were drunk, right? He says, you're not answering my question. It's true on that day you were seen drinking in a bar after shooting that young boy. But something's amiss. According to my research, there wasn't a single person who saw you drinking before you shot. So that is one thing where, according Johan's quote unquote research, that says that Richard did not drink before shooting. And maybe that is the case. But I'm also like, if he's an alcoholic, he could have drunk at home before going on the job. He didn't have to be out at a bar before shooting the kid. He definitely could have gone to a bar afterwards because obviously he was torn up about it. But if he's an alcoholic, you don't know if he woke up and drank. You don't know the full details. You're just knowing what you think. And so, like, I love the visual of the wind just, like, rattling against him as he's talking to him. Just like a storm brewing. I'm saying, could it be possible you weren't drunk when you shot that young boy? And Richard's like, excuse me? And the animation is so clean and fluid in this. It's astounding. Like at times like these, you forget that it's a dated anime because the animation is so fluid and beautiful. He says, you were sober. You were calm. You calmly pulled the trigger because you wanted to execute him. And Richard's like, excuse me? Am I mistaken? And he says, you're wrong. Why are you trying to forget? Or are you just lying? Are you lying to others or just to yourself? Did you confirm that young boy's crimes? Did you have the right to execute him? So he's saying that did you know for sure? Are you lying and using the alcohol as an excuse to help give you a way to clear your name? We'll go back to that. Like, is that what you're doing at this moment? Do you think that by pretending your sins would go away? And Richard's that all he has to do is just sit there and calmly like deconstruct. Oh my God. And that shot of him like with his head down smiling. Oh my God. What a heavy sin. How can one who has committed such a sin meet his daughter as though he's made a complete comeback? And just saying like, basically saying that Richard has no right to see her. Like he's not made a comeback from anything. It's fabricated. And then the door like shutting and the animation of like everything getting smaller and like the fishbowl out. And it looks like the shot of him just completely destroyed, his spirit destroyed. And there's the shot of the eyeball there. Like as it zooms out, it's literally the eyeball of Johann looking at him. It is absolutely insane. And then that smile. And we don't get to see, we've only seen Johann with a very angelic face, but that smile, that smirk is devilish. It is fiendish, right? It's the monster. And he pulls out, I thought he was going to pull a gun out from behind him, but it's the bottle. And he says, how about it? What about now? Will you have a drink? Oh, just tempting him. And then Gillen is at him. And that's when they tell him that your patient is dead. What the fudge? Okay. Yeah, tempting him. I was like, Richard, don't take a drink. He's just, you know he's a liar. You know he's a liar. You know he's pathological. He's a liar and you know it. Your counselors even told you about this. Don't fall for this. So, okay. So, it's such a complicated situation because, yeah, what if, let's just go with Johann and say that Richard was sober when he shot the boy, the young man, the young boy, the 17-year-old Joss. Let's say he was sober when he shot Joss. He thought he was a convicted 11-time murderer, a convicted serial killer. And he was a convicted serial killer and he shot him sober and then got drunk afterwards. And then, but again, I think there had to be some kind of history of him drinking and being an alcoholic. Otherwise, the one time he drank wouldn't have been enough for that intervention to just happen then. It seemed like it built up before then, right? Maybe it had made it, maybe it hadn't, right? And so Richard had used the alcoholism as an excuse to get better and to better himself so that he could absolve himself of his sins, go be his daughter, and get his life back and everything's fine. And Johann's mad about that because he's like, no, so you get to kill this kid and then you get to make up that you were alcoholic and then get yourself clean and suddenly you're absolved of your sins and you don't have to suffer for it and your daughter can see you again and you can have everything and you don't have to, the child, Joss is still dead that you shot, but now you get to have a great life again. Like that seems like what Johann is getting at. And I can understand why Johann, if Joss, because it gets complicated, because if Joss was somebody like Junkers, that just robbed a bank but didn't kill anybody. If that was the case, and basically this man kind of like but it's sort of like a Mueller situation, right? Where Mueller killed Nina's foster parents, but then he went to go and like live this high-end life with his wife like nothing was happening. He ended up paying for it though. Roberto ended up coming back to him with it. So maybe I can understand why Johann would be mad at him if that, by saying that it's not fair that you were able to kill this young man and get off scot-free by blaming it on alcohol, and then that's fine. That's not fair, and that should not absolve you from your sins. I can understand why Johann would say that, and that there is some validity to that. And I say, you know, he was 17. The young boy argument, technically, yeah, he is a young man. He is a young boy. But 9 rape homicides and 2 homicides? Who makes that up? How does that get made up without anything at all? But You can argue that the whole thing with Tenma is fabricated, but they've tied all these murders to him. Where did that come from? So you have that, but that's come from Johan. So it's like, but damn it. And then there's the thing of, it seems like in all of Richard's visions and flashbacks that he's had, he always sees the boy aiming the gun at him, like he's going to shoot him. So then there's the question of, was it self-defense? Did Richard see him pull the gun up and he shot first? What do we do with that? What if Joss was going to kill him? So what do we do with that? Is Richard really a bad person for defending himself? Is he a bad person for firing a gun at somebody who killed 11 others before him? Is he a bad person for possibly trying to cover up a sober shooting of a man by blaming on alcoholism and getting sober and using that as a scapegoat? I mean, you can have varieties of opinions about that. But my thing is that Johan seems a little bit self-righteous in all of this, because on the one hand, you have Johan telling Richard this and making pretty good points, but in the same breath, I'm like, you're also framing another man for a similar situation, and you also have murdered people. He's murdered people. And I'm like, you've executed people yourself. Did they deserve to die? Did the gardener deserve to die? Did Nina's parent? You've had people kill people for you. We know he's killed the gardener. We know he killed Nina and their foster parents back when Nina shot him. Like, what? And maybe that's why Johan's like, well, I killed these foster parents, so Nina, you have every right to shoot me. Eye for an eye, you should totally shoot me, and maybe that's his argument. But I'm like, Johan, you have killed people at this point. And it's very hypocritical of him to call out Richard for being an executioner when I'm like, you've executed people too. And Johan's excuse is that, I'm sure Johan's excuse will be, well, those people weren't children, they were adults. And I'm like, okay. I do agree. Like I said, my dad has worked at a juvenile detention center. I have a lot of problems with it. I think juveniles that have committed crimes should go to rehabilitation and counseling. I don't think they should get thrown into prison. I'm very much against it, personally. That's just my philosophy. I think that you should do mediation, you should do therapy, you should do lots of things. They should be given resources to get better rather than being thrown into prison as punishment when they're at that age. Now, I have a little bit of issue. If the 9 rape homicides and the 2 regular homicides were real, I'd have a little issues with Joss, because that is premeditated. That is something bad. I don't believe he should have died for it, but just, letting him off, being like, don't do that anymore. That's not enough. There needs to be something there. Right? Something needs to go on. Like, there needs to be something happening. And I don't know if rehabilitation for somebody that rapes 9 people is gonna cut it. That there is a hard line there, and it kind of depends on you personally. But I do understand Johan saying that in Joss's case, he's talking about Joss, he brings up, like, child abuse. He brings up, them possibly being violated, things happening. Like, yeah, it's not good. And as a child, you should have the right to survive, develop, and preserve your identity. Sure, I'm all for that. But then, in that same breath, Johan is fostering with these kids he's hanging out with this mentality of destruction and chaos. And I'm like, so you're conditioning these kids to do awful things, but then you're saying, well, I'm telling them to do awful things and conditioning them that that's okay, but don't punish them. I'm like, what do we do with that? What do you even do with that? So I understand where Johan's coming from in a lot of areas, but then some of the actions he takes are in direct contrast to what he's arguing and serve the exact opposite, that I'm like, what is happening? So it's just, I'm so floored. I'm like, what do we even do with this? And we don't know what he's doing with Shuvald. It is not something good. We don't know what his plans are. How is Tenma involved in this? How is Nina involved in this? But Johan as a character is so fascinating, because on the one hand, you kind of see him wanting to protect children, and you can see that he has issues from how the people at Kinderheim were treated, and that is totally valid. But then when you think back, you're like, but wait, Johan, weren't you sitting on top of a throne watching people kill each other at that same place? Like, what? And if you killed Richard, how does that... There's a lot to think about. A lot to think about. Johan is a complex character. I have issues with him. But I get where he's coming from, so it's hard to... You can't totally be against everything he's doing, because I'm like, no, I see what you're about and what you're representing, but so much also of what you're saying is contradicting your own actions and the things that you're setting up. So, excuse me? Like, why is there not more practicing what you are preaching? I don't know, but I do know there are not two Johans. There is one Johan. There is a monster there. And if you want to argue Johan's a monster, sure. If you want to say that he has a monster inside him like everybody else, sure. But there is something there. But there is not two Johans. The Johan in the park with the children is every bit self-aware of what he is doing as the Johan on the rooftop, as the Johan with the liquor bottle, as the Johan talking to Carl, as the Johan sweet-talking Schuvald. That Johan is the same one the entire time. There is no split personality. It's all Johan. He is just a complicated, complex serial killer who is maybe even more monstrous than that. And I don't know what to do with it. But again, I'm sorry that you all... I'm going to have to watch ahead. I'm going to have to watch episode 30. I'm going to have to. I've got to watch episode 30. There's no way around it. No way around it. Ah! Oh my God. I don't want Richard to be dead, but he probably is. And I'm kind of floored. And there's so many thoughts on Johan that I need to just sit and dissect and just let sink in. But I get it. I don't think Joss should have died. And I do appreciate that Richard was trying to own up to it. But then, should Richard be able to be blaming alcohol on it? But that's kind of like the split personalities. But so far Johan has not claimed that he himself has a split personality. I think that is a major thing of contestment. Nina is the one that has purported that he has a split personality. Johan himself has not said he has a split personality. That's the thing. And I'm waiting for the moment where Timma does finally confront him. And he's like, are there two Johans? And Johan's like, no, just me. And I'm waiting for that moment, right? But I don't know when or if we're going to get it anytime soon. But God, I'm so fascinated. I'm so fascinated. I don't know what to do. So I am so curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm sure you have many. Just please no spoilers for things to come. That's all I ask. And yeah, I'm gonna let this soak in some more and marinate for a while, and then come back for episode 30. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more Monster. Bye.